residents fighting for a human necessity, something that no one should ever have to fight for. Privatization led to a fight for life for many.
Choose caring over convenience. Bolivia.
Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Water war.
Cochabamba
Bolivia.
Water War. Hi, I'm Melissa Dahman, and I'm here with
Ariel Mclain.
and we are both freshmen at Walsh University in North Canton, Ohio. I am majoring in sociology.
And I am majoring in chemistry pre-professional. Melissa and I are both Blue and Global Scholars here at Walsh.
Each Global Blue and Scholars cohort focuses on a global issue our world is facing. Our global issue is water, quality, accessibility, and the future.
Today we are going to chat about what some call the first great victory against corporate globalization in Latin America, the Cochabamba Water War.
Okay, so the Cochabamba Water War was much more than just a struggle for water for the residents of Cochabamba, Bolivia. It showed that people were tired of the corruption they were dealing with. This so-called war was also a fight for social transformation within Bolivia. This war consists of protests against an unjust privatization of the water system in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
So where is Cochabamba, Bolivia?
Bolivia is in South America.
What is it located by?
It is on the east side of Peru and Chile.
Oh, okay. So where does this war start then? And when did it?
So the war started around 1998, and it went until about 2001. That's when we see the end of it. And this war began as a simple act of privatization, which led to a civil dispute for a necessity of human life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Melissa, what prompts the privatization?
So to understand the privatization, we need to explain some background about the IMF and Bolivia. So the IMF is the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund approved an $138 million loan for Bolivia to help the country control inflation and bolster economic growth. But in compliance with IMF-drafted structural reforms for the nation, Bolivia had to agree to sell off all remaining public enterprises.
Really?
Yeah. So that included the national oil refineries and Cochabamba's local water agency, SEMAPA or CMAPA. Yeah. So The selling off of CMAPA is where privatization for water starts and where our problem starts.
Okay, so how did this privatization become a problem for the Cochabamba citizens?
Yeah, so the Cochabamba citizens saw problems with their rates for water. So Agua del Tunari, which is the company that eventually took over the water system, they bought it off of Bolivia. That's who Bolivia sold it to. So once they got a hold of it, they wanted to start making improvements, or what they said were to be improvements to the city, which meant that they raised the rates that they would have the money as a company to do that. But this meant that residents who were on the poorer side were left struggling to find money to be able to buy water because it was no longer a public agency. The company Agua del Tunari was allowed to raise the rates as they pleased.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Wow, that's really...
Yeah.
All right, so the rate hikes made people unhappy, and it caused many citizens living in poverty to struggle for basic human necessity, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where the conflict starts. That very idea is what leads to the upcoming events of the war. Okay. The next month, February 2000, is when the protests became violent. When their peaceful protests in January weren't being heard, they resorted to violence to capture the attention of their government.
Like mini protests.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So sadly, people were hurt in these violent protests. 7 people died, including one being a young boy. 20 people were arrested, and there were about 175 other injuries from the protests. What happened to cause these injuries? On April 8th of 2000, there was the first incident that led to the death of a 17-year-old boy. He was shot by a Bolivian army captain who opened fire into a crowd of demonstrators. So what prompted him to shoot into the crowd? Well, the president of Bolivia had just declared a state of siege, which allows the government to arrest and detain individuals without warrants, and also enforce travel restrictions and curfews. So basically things were getting out of control, or more out of control than the government preferred. So they put Bolivia into a state of government control so they could run the state using military force and other measures without going through the courts to get warrants and other similar processes. So that doesn't seem too fair for the citizens of Bolivia, and it was just an extreme answer to the issue of controlling their nation. Another piece of this conflict is called the La Coordinadora. The La Coordinadora was a grassroots community coalition that were for the defense of water and life. The leader of this group was Oscar Oliveri. On April 6th, so to put in perspective, only 2 days before the young boy was killed, Oscar Oliveri is arrested. The La Coordinadora agreed to meet with government officials in Cochabamba regarding the water rate hikes. During this meeting is when Oliveri is arrested. So essentially, they trapped him. So, for 4 days, Oliveri was in hiding. On April 10th, Oliveri signs an agreement with the Bolivian government that guarantees the withdrawal of Aguas del Tunari, grants control of Cochabamba's water to La Coordinadora, assures the release of detained protesters, and promises to repeal water privatization legislation. This includes any legislation that would charge for those who draw water from local wells. They were able to reach an agreement for all of that, surprisingly. So how did others outside of Bolivia react to this war? Well, the World Bank president said he didn't believe that water should be publicly subsidized. According to Wolfenson, the biggest problem with water is the waste of water through lack of charging. He said this at a press conference in Washington, D.C. on April 12th, which then sparked protests by the 16th of April. Thousands of anti-globalization activists attempt to blockade the IMF and the World Bank meetings in D.C. Oscar Oliveri is present, saying, "The people have recaptured their dignity, their capacity to organize themselves, and most important of all, the people are no longer scared." All of the past events happened in 2000, within only a couple months since the privatization. So now we're going to jump ahead to the next year, 2001. August 6, 2001, the president of Bolivia needs to resign due to a sickness. The presidency is then handed to the vice president, a Cochabamba native. He has 1 year left to serve of the former president's 5-year term. He cannot seek re-election after that 1 year. Okay, so we're going to fast forward again to November of 2001. Agua del Tunari is clearly upset by the unprivatization of water, and they apply to the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. Agua del Tunari alleges that the Bolivian government violated a bilateral trade agreement. Something to keep in mind as we continue forward is that Agua del Tunari is a multinational consortium of private investors. This includes the Bechtel Corporation. Okay, so November 27th, 2001, the same month that Agua del Tunari applies to the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, Oscar Oliveri is arrested in Cochabamba by Bolivian authorities. He is arrested on charges of sedition, conspiracy, instigating public disorder, and criminal association. Warrants based on similar charges are issued for 2 other members of La Coordinadora. Oliveri is released the same day, but must report to a police station every 72 hours. On November 30th, 2001, the charges against Oliveri are dropped. They received hundreds of letters protesting the arrest of Oscar Oliveri. A government official issues verbal assurances that the charges against Oliveri and his 2 colleagues will be dropped. Oliveri is no longer required to report to authorities every 72 hours, so the people won this battle. So after the water privatization, there are 2 companies that are upset by this. Agua del Tunari, which was the water company that managed it, and its parent corporation, Bechtel. On February 25th, 2002, Agua del Tunari and Bechtel seek $25 million from Bolivia. This case was registered with the World Bank's International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, as stated earlier. So Aqua del Tenari and Bechtel seek this $25 million in damages for breach of an exclusive 40-year, multi-million-dollar contract to bring drinking water and sanitation services to Bolivia's third-largest city, Cochabamba. According to a senior counsel at the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, Aqua del Tenari's case against Bolivia is considered just beginning at this point, and the two parties now have to go through the process, which can take up to 2 years for an actual ruling to be announced.
On April 23, 2002, Oscar Oliveri leads a group of 125 protesters to Bechtel's headquarters in San Francisco.
Oliveri urges the corporation to drop its demands for compensation, claiming, with the $25 million they are seeking, 125,000 people could have access to water.
Bechtel officials agreed to meet with Oliveri.
The next day, Oliveri accepts the Goldman Environmental Prize Award. He had been given this award earlier in 2001, but could not accept because he was hiding from Bolivian authorities at the time.
At the end of this conflict, water is no longer privatized, and the citizens of Cochabamba are able to have access to a human necessity for life.
Water.
Thank you for joining me, Melissa.
You're welcome, Ariel. Thank you for asking me questions.
It's very informative. I hope our listeners got as much out of it as I did.
Yes, me too. Residents fighting for a human necessity. Something that no one should ever have to fight for. Privatization led to a fight for life for many.
Choose caring over convenience.
Cochabamba.
Bolivia.
Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Water war.
Cochabamba
Bolivia.
Water War.